Hey everyone, I'm Tiffany and welcome to the Wise Skies channel. Wise Skies is a spiritual development company. We focus on astrology, human design, and psychic development. And today I have a very special guest with me, Cindy Girman. Thank you so much for being here from your beautiful beach home.
Thank
And
you for having me.
yes, I've been looking forward to this conversation for quite some time. Cynthia, I met through Wise Skies because we had a series of mediumship sessions together. And through one of these sessions, we received guidance that she would soon be writing a book. And so I cannot believe that I have full body chills that we made it this day. You did it.
I did it.
Congratulations. You know, the topic is very difficult. And I was telling Cynthia, I don't think I'll make it through this half hour without crying a little. So, this is your warning. This is a sensitive subject. We're talking about the passing of her son, and we're talking about the process of writing a book, co-authoring it with him. And we're talking about the afterlife. So if these topics speak to you, the message is very hopeful and very helpful and very insightful. And so before we get going, Cynthia, would you tell us a little bit more about you and your life and your whole essence?
Sure. First of all, I usually go by Cindy, but that's fine. Only my mother calls me Cynthia, usually when she's mad. My background is in actually biostatistics and epidemiology, so a very, very different thing from being an author. We had adopted two children from Russia. The first was our son, Alec, he grew up in Chapel Hill in North Carolina. And he had some challenges. He had high functioning autism, which made him a little isolated, a little different. He felt different from everyone else. And he started experimenting with drugs in high school. And it went on from there. And he accidentally overdosed October 20th, 2021. And it was devastating. My husband and I and our daughter were shocked. We were in shock for months. But we found a lot of solace from a medium session that we had about 4 months after he passed. And then I found my way to you. And it was amazing how that session changed everything. And I'm going to cry. He really came through in that session and suggested that this book be written, that his story and his journey be told. And I didn't know I was going to write it, but if you remember, you said, sit down every morning, very early in the morning, before dawn, and write on consecutive days until it's done. And you said 6 weeks, but it took me 8. And it actually worked. I mean, you said to sit down with intention, that you were going to write with Alec, and he definitely came through to me, and it was an astonishing experience for me.
I'm going to cry too. So that is absolutely, it's so stunning. And what's so wild about spirit and about these kind of synchronicities is that since you have written this book, I have had other moms come to me with a similar experience that also want to do something like this automatic writing exercise where you're sitting early in the morning, you're working with your spirit guides, your God, your loved ones, and you're having this like early writing time. And yes. So, you took spirit up on the suggestion and you did it, and you produced a beautiful work of art, a beautiful conversation. The style of the book is, it has both voices. It has both your voice, Cindy, and your son's voice, Alec, and it's very clear who's what. It flows, and it was very natural. And so one of my questions is that the order that it went in your conversations, or was there much patchwork going on?
It was sort of the order. There were a couple of chapters that switched around, but it was the order. It ended up that the editor, who Hope, had suggested that I have the two story arcs throughout the book. I had kind of concentrated them more in the beginning, but through having the two arcs going on simultaneously throughout the book, his physical life and then his journey into the afterlife and what it's like there in our conversations, I think it made it a lot more interesting, and pulled the reader along, with the journey that we were taking together.
Oh, one of the things that also really surprised me is that I shared the vision I saw of the cover when we were in session. And when you
Yes.
sent me the cover, I was blown away because it was exactly as I had seen it without much. I just told you the color, right? I didn't
Right.
go
Yeah.
into
You
it.
just told me the color. Yeah. I love the cover, how it turned out. I actually had found an artist through Facebook who had some near-death experiences, and that was his inspiration for his paintings. And I had bought a couple of them, and then I asked him if he would do the cover of the book, and he did the artwork without the silhouette. You maybe the audience will see that later, but he did the cover, and then my graphic artist, who is really talented, she's a high school friend of mine, she added the silhouette, and I think it made such a difference. The silhouette looks like it's going into a tunnel of light, and it just came out beautifully, I think.
Okay, it is stunning, and I'm just touched at how it all came together. I want to go back to talk a little bit about another part of the writing process that we discussed, that you did write about in the book towards the end, when you were talking about writing through some of your fears and the fears about losing the connection with Alec. And I wonder if you want to share a little bit about how that exercise impacted you or enhanced the experience.
Yeah, well, we had a session to try to look at letting go some of my fears, and that helped. And also, I actually, in addition to the writing and writing through that, which helped, I actually visited a shaman, and I had an incredible experience where he did an energy release on me. And after that, I was so much calmer. I've always had anxiety my whole life, and I was so much calmer after that session, that energy release session with him. Alec throughout the book was kind of trying to get me to release those fears and to release that anxiety so that I could live my life to the fullest. And I really feel like I am well on my way to doing that, which is great. It's a great benefit of having, this whole experience.
It is, and it is for other people. I think that provides a lot of really practical tools for something you can do during the grieving seasons. Not only does it bring this closeness with your loved one, but it also helps you work through your own fears that are kind of hanging out and waiting, helps pausing your life. So I think it's a beautiful thing that you touched on with your fears and your anxieties. Very honest look at it.
Yeah, can I just share with you something that happened this morning?
Yeah.
Today is Alec's birthday.
Yes.
And so it's a, I think a known day that he knows that we would be sad. And Father's Day was Sunday. So it's double so for my husband. And this morning at 5 a.m., it was exactly 5 a.m., I awoke to the sound of these tones kind of going fast, almost like a keypad on a telephone. And it was just, it was a little subtle, but I could definitely hear them. And once I heard them, I couldn't let it go. And it was pouring down rain, but I kept hearing these tones. And it was Alec calling me to come to do some active writing so that we could have a conversation. And I was really overwhelmed by that, because that's the first time it's happened that he has called me like that, since we had the writing sessions. Yeah.
That is such a powerful story. When my grandfather passed, my father told him, if you make it to the other side, make sure you call. And so we would have for years a series of people like that you would call and answer. This was back when we only had landlines and no one was there. And so for years we weren't getting the joke. And finally one day we were like, do you think that's him? I think he's calling. I think it's happening.
Yes. Right.
Spirit does use electronic, and how that came through with sound is absolutely stunning. When we scheduled this, right? Like, it's been quite some time since we had talked, and you went through the publishing process, and you said pick a day, right? We were looking at kind of mid to late June. You told me pick a day. I said, how about June 21st? And you said, that's Alec's birthday. And so, there are just no mistakes with this whole process. Has been very validating that he's with you, and loving you and surrounding you with all the love from heaven.
Yes. So, and thank you so much for your part in that, because you really made that happen.
Oh, well, thank you it's all spirit. It's not, I'm just a channel for you guys. And it touches me to do this work. It blesses me. It honors me. It helps me with my own faith, to see these sessions and to see what happens in people's lives is so, it's just the most touching experience. I want to pull out a quote that, speaking of experience, of something that Alec said in the book. And then I want to move into some questions about the afterlife process that I know some of our listeners are going to be eager to hear, because they share those same questions. So the quote, one of the quotes that I just really loved was, our experience in the physical world is intended to teach us how our choices and decisions I can't do it. Either guide us toward or away from a more loving soul. That means loving ourselves first. Okay, so I'm going to do it again. Our experience in the physical world is intended to teach us how our choices and decisions either guide us toward or away from a more loving soul. That means loving ourselves first. That was like a jaw-dropping line for me, and it stopped everything, like record scratch stop.
Yes.
And so I pulled that one out because I think that it answers a big question for some people. Why are we here? What are we supposed to be learning? What are my lessons, right? Well, your lessons are unique to you, and Alec had some hard lessons. But as you pointed out, he had some good lessons too. And as he talked about, one of the things I found interesting in your conversation is when you were talking about the afterlife process with him, he says, they say your whole life flashes by when you're about to die. Mine didn't do that. I merely woke up on the other side. And I liked that, because in my own near-death experience, I didn't have that. I didn't have the whole life flash before my eyes either. That's not to say it doesn't happen, right? Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the person and their experience and what is needed at that time. The idea that all of us are going to see a light at the end of the tunnel and everybody's going to have this type of experience, that really boxes in, makes finite and infinite expansive energy.
Yeah, I believe that everyone has a different experience that is suited to them. Some people would be overwhelmed by having their life flash by, at the time, that many people experience that. So I think it's all suited to who they are and what they can handle. And, some of the life review is also part of that, life flashing by you. But in Alec's case, it occurred after he kind of went through and met his relatives and loved ones and ancestors and everything. And then he went on to sort of a life review with his guiding spirit. So it was, I think everyone is just different. And I think maybe heaven is different for everyone,
maybe, right?
Yeah. It's all these dimensions are in place, and all this connectivity maybe everyone experience it in a different way.
I think so. I think, and I think hearing it from the different perspectives is just enhances our understanding and our peace with our own process, of life
Yes.
and then the
Right.
afterlife. Now, when Alec gets to the point where he's meeting with his spirit guide and his higher guides, he's talking about he says this is intended to review the key learnings from this physical life and whether it was sufficient for the intention. And so he does talk about that review process. And so if that's something that you guys are curious about, that might be a part of the book that you flip to first. My teacher, Lisa Williams, wrote a book called Survival of the Soul. And it's also a brilliant book on the afterlife process. And she also talks about meeting your ancestors and your family first. And in the way that she describes it, it's a comfort, there's a familiarity right there with you.
You're surrounded by love is the way he described it, just surrounded and just all encompassed by unconditional love. Yeah. Meeting the ancestors and relatives. And he had relatives on both of our sides, as well as in Russia with his birth mother and birth father, who he met for the first time. So yeah, there's a lot going on there as well. Yeah.
I mean, I have full body chill bumps again. I don't know if you guys can see this, but like whoosh, so spirit definitely is with us. One of the questions I know the readers and listeners are going to want to ask is there a God? Is there a God on the other side?
I believe there is. It's a higher power. I believe we call it God. Maybe it's called different things by different people, but there's definitely a higher power, I think. And that was clearly described and communicated by Alec, that there was a higher being that was complete and total love, so overwhelming that he is all about love, or he or she, the higher being is all about love, and it's all encompassing, and just fills you with goodness and bliss. Yeah.
And to me, it's like, make sure you spend your time sitting in that goodness and bliss, everybody. We just get up and have our coffees and go about our days and do our workouts and do our, mental gymnastics. But how much more important is it to sit with that higher being before you get going, in those dark hours?
Yeah.
In Alec's words, he says, I know now that there really does exist a divine higher being that I call God. I also know there will be many levels of learning before I get close to an inkling of the understanding that would allow me to grasp the enormity and vastness, the all-encompassing nature of that higher being. Okay, another question is, do all dogs go to heaven?
Of course. I believe that I will see my, my dogs that have passed. In fact, Alec mentioned them to me, that he had seen them, that they were there to greet him when he got there. We all love our dogs so much. They're part of the family, and they give us comfort in our physical life, and can give us comfort in heaven, I believe.
In our afterlife, yeah. Okay, there was a time when he was talking about there being many paths that he could follow, and that his ancestors are still with him and they're guiding him on this specific path. And so that there are also no mistakes on the many paths. And this really stood out to me from a spiritual experience I had when I was 20, give or take. I was going through like a whole existential crisis. Why are we here? What am I doing? I was having a hard time, depression type, that sort of season of life. And I went to a garden. I went for a walk, and in the garden, you're always going to end up at the rose garden, but you could go down the oriental, this Japanese rose garden. You could go down this other, like there were many different gardens on the way to the rose garden. And I looked down and I saw this little sign, and it said, stay on the path, stay on the path. It didn't matter which one, because we were all going to that same one, that same holy place, that same sacred pilgrimage of the journey of a human life. And so when you were writing about the infinite number of paths that he could follow, that really spoke to me too. And I think it brings people a sense of comfort, that you can't really mess it up,
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so much to explore on many of those paths. And I think he did spend some time doing that. But when he was with the ancestors and loved ones and relatives, they were guiding him on a very specific path that he was supposed to take in order to review his life. So yeah, there was a definite, guidance to the right path.
The right
Yeah.
one for him at that moment.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. And so
Yeah.
there they were, ready to guide him. There was no mistake for that. There was no mistake for the one that I chose on my way in. But we feel unguided sometimes, but we're always receiving guidance and information.
Yes. And there is, he described that there was total acceptance in heaven. Everyone accepts everyone else. There's no judgment. There's no mistakes, if you will. That everyone is accepted for who they are and for their true inner self, which is something that you really have to get to know, obviously, so that you can love yourself. You have to love yourself before you can fully love everyone else.
That's
So
right.
I think that was really enlightening to me. Yeah.
Okay, I do want to point everyone to where they can buy your book. So it's called A Voice from Heaven, From Earthly Struggles to Thriving in the Afterlife. They can go to Amazon. I'm going to put a link in all of the descriptions for all of the podcast platforms. And I'm going to do a screen share to show you guys the beautiful cover here. And while I'm doing that, Cindy, is there anything else that you would like to talk about? I don't want to give away too much more of the book. I think we get juicy, good nuggets, but is there anything that was really on your heart that you wanted to share?
Yeah, one thing that really came through to me was him saying that, don't just let life happen to you. Don't let life happen to you. Grasp it, live it, learn to love, get out in nature, do things. Don't just, and I think so many of us sit back and we get up, we have our routine, we go through, go to work, we come home, we have our routine, and we get into those patterns of just letting life happen to us, instead of living our life as we want to live it. We only had one of this particular physical life, and we should be living it well and doing things that are fun and happy and loving. And yeah, that really came through to me.
I love that. You're dead on with that. And I needed to hear that, right? I'm only this one Tiffany this one time. You're only this one Cindy this one time.
Right.
And so
Right.
what is it that we want to do with this special day, with this precious human life, and
Exactly.
our use of consciousness, our proper use of consciousness. Okay, so I'm going to do a little cover reveal here. Are you seeing everything? Or are you seeing the cover?
Yes, we're seeing the cover and us on video.
Okay,
Perfect.
great. Okay, perfect. So this is your beautiful, stunning cover. This is the outline that you mentioned that the second artist drew. The color, to me, if you study the spiritual meanings of color, right? This blue, this royal blue, is one of the ones that's connected to mediums. It's one of the ones that's connected to the afterlife. And I think it's absolutely just stunning. So I wanted to give everybody a sneak peek that's on YouTube with us. If you're listening on the podcast, you'll have to check the link. And in closing, on this very tender topic, on this very tender day, I know that it's Cindy's heart and mine to talk about this, to bring hope to people going through seasons of deep, dark grief. And so there was a quote that at the end that Cindy wrote that I'd like to share with you guys. And she says, "Love is everything. I hope that by reading this book, readers recognize that and appreciate that life does not end when our physical body gives out. We have much to look forward to and much to do before then. Also, that there are ways to continue your relationship with your loved ones who pass to the spiritual realm, only in a different way. Um, in our session, you said that I was the third medium to bring up the J name. And you talk about that in the book a little bit. And we believe
Yes,
the J name was Jeshua and Jesus.
yes,
And
yes.
so this was a very powerful awareness. And so I loved that you closed the book with a quote from the Bible from 2 Corinthians. It's praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves have received from God. And I just thought that was such a beautiful way to close your book. I don't know how you stopped writing it. I don't know if you'll write some more, but it
Yes, I may start a new book, but it was clear that Alec was ready to close the book. He thought that there was enough material, and he had things to do in the afterlife. He had to go teach and learn other things, and so there was a clear time when it was time to wrap it up, but. It was an astonishing experience, and I hope that I can continue to have such experiences.
I think you will. I think, you're clearly primed up for medium class, Cindy. So I hope to see you over here at Wise Skies. And just thank you for taking spirit up on this. I think it's enhanced your life. I think it's given hope to other people. And that's really the best possible thing that you could do, during this season.
Yeah, that's really what my intent was, to share his story so that maybe it would help others that were in profound grief or had fear of dying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, happy birthday, Alec. We miss you here on Earth. And thank you so much, Cindy, for hanging out with me today. Again, people can go to Amazon to find your book. And I'm just so grateful that you took up this project. It turned out so well. So congratulations.
And thank you for having me, and thank you so much for helping guide me into this experience. It was just astonishing, and I am so grateful every day for it.
Okay, namaste. Our hearts go out to you.